Hello, today I am going to talk about what I think is one of the most underestimated pieces of landscape photography gear, the L bracket. So let's talk about what an L bracket is. An L bracket is typically a piece of metal. Bottom of the camera mounts here. This side goes on the left side of the camera, and it provides a mounting surface for your camera both in landscape mode and portrait mode. And at its core elements, that's what an L bracket is. It seems pretty simple, and it really sort of is. So I underestimated the importance of an L bracket for quite some time. I had my camera, I had a tripod, I had some filters, and that's what I needed. And I got lots of great images with that. And if that's what you're starting with, really all you need is a camera to get started with. But if we're talking about things that help improve your landscape photography game, just make your life a little easier, an L bracket is a very worthwhile investment for your landscape photography gear. So let's jump in and look at some of what I think are the three main reasons an L bracket helps your landscape photography and helps you get the photos that you want. So first, let's talk about composition. So you're out there in the field, got your tripod all set up, and you typically start out in landscape mode, right? Camera mounted flat to the tripod. You're mounted up there, you do your landscape pictures, and you're like, let's play with the composition, let's do a portrait mode. So you're sitting in landscape mode, and you rotate to portrait mode, and look what just happened. Your composition went from here to here, which is both a shift and a dip to your composition. So you're going to have to reconfigure somehow, whether that be adjust the tripod, rotate the camera, adjust the ball head. It just changes the composition. Whereas if you're trying to maintain just and put what was the center of your frame as the center of focus in a portrait mode, an L bracket would allow you to do that, because when you shift it, an L bracket, you're going from here and then you detach, put it on, and boom, you're still centered, you're right where you want to be. So it helps you maintain your composition and make a more subtle change to it to try that portrait mode versus this whole shift and down thing that happens when you're just on top of a tripod. So I feel composition is made easier and more consistent with an L bracket because it doesn't force you to make that massive change in composition when you want to switch over to portrait mode. You obviously still can if you want, but you're not forced to, whereas you are if you're just on top of a normal tripod head and rotating it over. So that's one. I think an L bracket can help with your composition, help give you some consistent composition, and make it easier to play with new compositions if you want, as opposed to it being dictated by having to shift over. So the other area is stability, is another area that an L bracket really helps. So if you're sitting on top landscape mode, you're sitting here like this, you decide you want to do portrait mode. Well, in landscape mode, you're perfectly centered over the tripod. With an L bracket, you can bring it like this and you're still centered over top of the tripod. If you're not using an L bracket and you tilt over, you've shifted that center of gravity. And that shifting of the center of gravity does a couple things. One, now you're off center, your camera weight is off to the side, and there's a good chance it's making your tripod setup unstable, which puts your camera equipment at risk of either getting bumped, a wind coming along and knocking it over because it's not stable anymore. The other piece is if you're doing long exposures and you've shifted, you're definitely more susceptible to a breeze, a wind, anything like that, which could give you soft focus on a long exposure. Whereas with the L bracket, you're keeping that weight over top of the tripod, which keeps it nice and stable both for camera safety and for long exposures. And another element is if you've twisted off, if no L bracket and you just got your normal quick release plate and you've shifted your camera off to the side, you've got all that weight just by that quick release plate, and now it's twisting on a screw that can move, so you could actually get a little bit of droop or dip from your camera weight as you're off to the side. Whereas with the L bracket, you're still sitting straight on top, and you won't have that. So it's super helpful for, even with mirrorless cameras, which is what I shoot with, there's still enough weight that's nice not to have to worry about that. So to me, L brackets bring a great sense of stability to your tripod and your ability to use it both from camera safety and from your long exposure stability. And finally, the third reason I think an L bracket brings an improvement to your photography is efficiency. It makes it super easy to switch from landscape mode to portrait mode, not only compositionally, but also from the standpoint of you've kept the center of gravity of your camera over the tripod. So that means you don't have to shift and readjust your tripod like we mentioned earlier, you probably spent a good amount of time getting a solid base for when your camera's in landscape mode. But when you shift it with no L bracket, there's a good chance you're gonna have to readjust your tripod, readjust the length of the legs, things like that, to get it stable again, to have that center of gravity that you want. On an L bracket, because you're still centered over top, you save all that time of having to readjust your tripod. It should already be stable. So I find that is a big improvement for a couple of reasons. One, just, it's faster to switch to portrait mode. And two, efficiency tends to make you try things more often, because if you know it's gonna be pretty easy to try this shot in portrait mode, you're more likely to do it than if you're like looking at this waterfall, say, and you're like, well, I'd like to do portrait mode, but then I'm gonna switch it, and then my tripod's gonna need restabilized, and that's gonna take me time. And the good light is actually probably 5 minutes away. So if I switch it and I wanna go back to landscape because I think that's gonna look better, now I have to readjust it all again. So you sometimes don't take a shot because you think it's gonna be too much work to switch to that. So an L bracket makes it so easy to switch back and forth that you're freer to experiment with your shots to get the compositions you want. So that's one area where I think the efficiency really helps. The other one is just attaching the camera to the tripod is fast and easy. These L brackets have such a large and solid attachment base compared to the quick release plates I've used. I can confidently put my camera on top, screw it to the tripod head, and be confident that's attached well and safely and stable. A lot of times with the smaller ones, I'm like double checking it. Is it all the way in there? Do I have this centered, or is there not enough bracket in here? So an L bracket makes that super easy. And that applies not only to being in landscape mode, but there's a similarly large one for portrait mode. So just regular attachment and detaching the camera to the tripod, I find is very easy, quick, and I always feel that it's soundly secured, which is great. So those are the 3 reasons I think an L bracket should be in your landscape photography gear kit. From the perspective of compositions, being able to be in landscape and switch to portrait and maintain a composition that you have without a lot of rework, I think is important. From stability, which both includes camera stability, just safety, it being centered over the tripod like it should, so you don't have any equipment accidents in the field. That's a very reassuring sense. Coupled with, for long exposure photography, if you're switching over to portrait mode, you're not now hanging the weight off to the side. L bracket lets you stay centered, which helps you have more stability during those long exposures so you don't end up with soft photos. So that's important. And then finally, efficiency, in that it allows you to easily experiment with those compositions from landscape to portrait. And just the simple attaching the camera to and from the tripod, I find is just much, much faster and much, much more secure with an L bracket than it is with the normal quick plates that I've used with my other tripod heads. So those are the 3 reasons why I think an L bracket will help improve your landscape photography, and it's well worth adding to your kit. And finally, let's just talk about a couple quick tips in case you decide to go out and pick up a L bracket for yourself. There's a couple recommendations I have. First, make sure you get a metal bracket. Metal bracket, like I said earlier, it makes it so nice and secure to attach. I feel like some of the efficiency gains you get and stability gains are because this is a nice solid metal bracket, making clamping to a tripod quick and easy. So make sure you get a metal bracket. Second, there's universal L brackets and there's L brackets that are made for your camera. I highly recommend getting the ones made for your camera, tailored for it. My L bracket is a 3-legged thing, Zelda, made for a Nikon Z series, Z5, Z6, Z7. And what they mean by being made for the camera is it's fit so that I can access the compartments on the side. I can still easily access the battery and SD card. And my articulating screen still works, flip out screen still works with no problem. It's not obstructed in any form or fashion. So those things are all things I think make it nice, because a universal bracket could obstruct the flip out screen, making it unusable or not the full motion that you'd want to get. It could obstruct your battery compartment, and that's just not any fun if every time you have to change a battery or access an SD card, if you have to take your L bracket off and put it back on, especially if you're out in the field or if it's cold or anything like that. So I highly recommend looking for an L bracket that is made for your camera. They're a little more expensive, but I feel like the frustration it saves is well worth it. And finally, be aware of the mounting system on your tripod. Arca Swiss is very popular. All of my stuff uses Arca Swiss, so my L brackets mount directly to Arca Swiss tripod heads. And it's super nice because I have multiple tripods and I know it's going to work with all of them. There are proprietary mounting systems for some tripods out there, and make sure you know if yours is one, because if it is, that'll probably limit which L brackets you can look for, or it would push you in a situation where you need to use a converter to get from one type of L bracket connection to another. I like the Arca Swiss just because it's so universal. It matches everything I've got, so it makes it super easy. But when you're looking for one, just make sure you're aware that you've got an attachment system that's going to work with your tripods that you have. So yeah, those are my 3 tips to keep in mind for if you go looking for an L bracket. So I hope you found today's video helpful. If you did like it, please click that like button. It means a whole lot. And feel free to subscribe to the channel as well so you can see future content. Thank you.